Let's see, the baker, the candle maker, but who am I forgetting? Right, of course. Well, then I'd like you to meet Angus Mloud. Element, nature. Birthday, May 9th, Taurus. Blood type O. Angus Mloud is the patriarch of the Mloud family in Owlden. His wife is Nessa Mloud, and his sons are Kenneth and Brian. There's not a whole lot to Angus, and his story is pretty plain. From what I understand, Matthias Riddell hired Angus shortly after Owlden was first founded as a village. Butchery, he said, was one of the key components of civilization, else they might as well all live in caves. It may come as no surprise for you to hear that humans have been eating meat before it was even regular practice to put carcass to coals. Archaeologists have identified the shift from raw meat consumption to cooked meat consumption at around 1.9 million years ago, meaning they were eating it raw for over 600,000 years. After that, they were mostly cooked on bonfires. Dedicated hearths didn't appear until around 400,000 years ago. And this is around the same time that we discovered the first ever butchery site in the United Kingdom, near Kent. Romans had butchery as a dedicated trade starting at around 800 years before the Common Era. This marked the change from nomadic tribes and small hunting and gathering societies into towns, villages, and hovels, but also the large and sprawling megapoly that the empire became most known for, apart from its roads. Because of this shift, not every household had the space to keep livestock, and so it became necessary to change the way things had always been done in order to make sure everyone had that precious succulent animal fiber. Vegans will tell you it's wrong to eat meat, but I just see it as meat-on-meat violence, so I'm not really sure why it's such a big deal. No hate for vegans, though. It takes a lot of dedication to go against one's nature as an obligate omnivore, and I can respect the vibe, but not the way quinoa is made. So much quinoa. But back to butchers. The types of meat prepared by medieval butchers include fish, beef, chicken, veal, lamb, and even pigeons. The choicest cuts of meat were then sent off to the local castle, with the rest being disseminated amongst the village populace. And while some butchers would operate stalls in an open marketplace, the slaughtering and preparing of meat was handled at specific slaughterhouses to maintain a certain level of sanitation even hundreds of years ago. This sanitation was heavily moderated and maintained by butchery guilds. The first butchery guilds were formed in 1272, making them the oldest guilds belonging to an official trade, even older than bakeries or blacksmiths. The guilds required butchers to maintain a high level of cleanliness in order to prevent the spread of foodborne illnesses. Keep in mind, this is something they understood even before they knew about germ theory. All they had to know is that somehow keeping the meat clean prevented it from being infected by miasma or some such. In all honesty, they probably believed that certain bodily fluids containing a balance of humors, even in animal flesh, could cause a person to develop a humor imbalance and become ill. I know I haven't talked about the humors in a while, and I go into a lot more detail about it in my video on blood types. But just to reiterate, prior to the concept of germ theory, in the 1800s, the prevalent understanding around illness had to do with Galen of Pergamon's miasma theory, in which he claimed that diseases such as cholera, chlamydia, or the plague were caused by bad air or night air rising up from rotting organic matter. Humors in this context refers to humoral theory, or humorism. Basically, the human body had a certain balance of bodily fluids, and these bodily fluids could do everything from control mood to determine different viral infections. Everything from the common cold to psychosis was blamed on an imbalance of humors. Humor is a translation of the Greek chymos, and literally means sap. So remember that the next time you hear someone being called sappy, they're basically saying this person's humors are off balance. But apart from that, butchers also had to maximize the amount of meat that could be processed, and this meant having an extensive knowledge of animal cuts and anatomy. Let's take a commonly eaten animal, chicken. When butchered, the most common parts of a chicken that get used are the breast, the tenderloin, the back, wing, leg, drumstick, and thigh. Each of these have different uses, but that can also depend on the quality of the meat. Things like stress, diet, and rearing conditions can have an overall effect on the quality of meat prior to preparation, which is why it's wise to be kind to your prey before you go off and just consuming it. Who wants buffalo wings that taste like depression? Generally, all the parts of the chicken were used. The US doesn't typically eat chicken feet, but many cultures worldwide consider it a staple. Backs, necks, giblets, and drumsticks can be used for chicken stock. The necks can also be eaten by themselves, in certain regards, stuffed, fried, or even braised. Butchers can tell all these cuts apart as common knowledge of the trade, and it's been rarely changed over the centuries, but they had to be careful. This knowledge was also essential to them maintaining a livelihood. Butchers had to watch for discoloration of meat, bad smells, or meat that was separating, unnaturally soft, or unnaturally firm. Butchers that mislabeled or sold poor quality meat in medieval times would face steep fines, prison time, or harsher sentences if it could be proven that mishandling of meat led to a public health crisis. So, choice cuts were reserved for the ruling class, nobles, burgesses, kings, and so forth, while cuts with less meat were less expensive and were typically bought up by civilians. This also caused a huge disparity in food distribution among the poorer class. To make matters worse, the nobility and wealthy owned many of the hunting lands and pasture lands where larger livestock was raised, and this led to frequent poaching. Because, of course, these people didn't have food. The owners owned all the means of production, and therefore they had to take it from them. In Owlden, for instance, Matthias' family owns the land in which sheep and other animals graze. They are also permitted by the ruling class to hunt in the forests or fish in the rivers and lakes. Angus, the butcher, then takes these carcasses, carves them up according to his carefully studied anatomy maps, and sells off whatever the village doesn't immediately need to the local guild. He's a rigid man who is also calm and precise. His cleaver is a standard tool made of steel by none other than Patrick Smith. His apron covers most of his clothes, and what isn't covered by the apron is a long, dark-colored tunic that hides smaller stains. When he's actively cutting meat, he'll wear a wrapped hat, like a hair cap, and his beard gets carefully braided. You know, when you look at him, though, doesn't he remind you a little of Tormund Giantsbane? You know, from Game of Thrones? His features are kind of based on him. I like the idea of a rugged but friendly butcher. Oh, here's something I found out while reading up for this page of the Bingo book. Among the common meats eaten in the Middle Ages were also bear and hedgehog. Bear meat was considered a highly prized meat, especially by nobles, and was often prepared and served in the same way you would venison. And a book titled Le Mange de Paris, written in 1393, contained a recipe for roasted hedgehog that advised them to be eaten with cameline sauce, or in a pasty with wild duck sauce. This would probably suggest that Sonic the Hedgehog and Daffy Duck taste similarly. Although the preparation for hedgehog meat reads similarly in the same book with how to prepare squirrel, and given the relative size of hedgehogs, that makes sense. Given the timeline and what we know of the area, bear meat would be too rich for Owlden. However, hedgehogs would be plentiful, but probably only prepared on special occasions, or during times where meat was more scarce. Still, they also wouldn't eat meat every single day. Fish would be a more common type of meat, and goat was also extremely popular. The spices were used liberally to flavor all types of meat, and the most common ones used were vinegar, garlic, onion, and herbs. Oh, but then I found about this one. Did you know that peacock was also considered a delicacy in medieval Europe? Yes, peacock. It would arrive at the table with the plumage preserved, and carefully removing the skin became a dinner event. It was then roasted and served with a wide variety of sauces because, reportedly, the meat didn't taste very good on its own and was typically tough and dry. Today, Europeans largely don't eat peacock, though it is farmed in parts of Asia, particularly China and India, where peacocks are farmed for this purpose, like biblically accurate chickens. And that's about where my well runs dry on this peculiar meat and butchery bits that bombard your brain. I do really hope you guys enjoy seeing these little history world-building projects. I really like doing them because I sincerely hold to the there is no knowledge that is not power, and I love increasing my knowledge. But also, it gives me the chance to really flesh out Owlden and truly immerse myself in what life was like for my family way back in the medieval period. It's like Roots with pyromancy, dragon girls, and a bit of generational trauma to blunt the edges and make it relatable. Are there any medieval jobs you guys could think of that I may have forgotten to mention? Drop it in the comments and I'll try to find out who the person was in Owlden that did that job. Until then, thanks for stopping in again this week. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. Our channel is going on 3 years of activity on YouTube, and not only are we close to 6,000 subscribers, but we just passed our milestone of over 500,000 views. And I seriously am blown away by all the support.
Wow, you guys. That's incredible. We really appreciate every single one of you viewers, every single one of you subscribers, and seeing those numbers go up like that really does encourage us to come back and keep working. And God, that is just so awesome. Thank you.
Now's the time where I push the Patreon page. Patreon is the best place for you to support us directly. There are a lot of available extras to keep you entertained, including extra chapters of Monomyth and some hints to future projects as well. Right now, indie artists like us need all the support we can get, and everything you give helps keep this story and this channel alive. Ultimately, it's up to every one of you that shows up each week to watch our videos, and I really can't thank you enough. For those of you who've joined us on Patreon, I'd like to give a shout out to Emily Mastronardi, Heinrich28, Pammy Poo, JC Moreland, Shadow Fox, Charles Tam, Arya Gabari, and Lunder Lumen. Also a big shout out to our channel members, Chain Furry. You can become a channel member and get access to my weekly content before anyone else. Many a Meko Maxamako. That means many small things make a big thing.